We'll add a marker for this. Okay, so if you're watching this on YouTube, this was on my stream. We're going to be jumping in. I have chat that will interact with me too. I'm going to be talking about the NA SOLOQ debate. Also, on top of that, Pobelter had an interview, which you see right here on Reddit, where he was interviewed by Travis. It was a day before the, NA SOLOQ, or a day before like the Mark Z, like little tidbit on LOL Esports, just so that you know like chronological order. I watched it. I went through a lot of comments, so I have a lot of thoughts on it. I tried to just condense everything into followable situations, but I might go on tangents. I'm not completely sure on this. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. So the first complaint that pretty much everyone has is as a pro player especially. This is mostly from reference points from a pro, because this is a debate on, why are NA players not as good, and why do we do poorly internationally? Why do players seem to not have good individual skill? So this all ties into the starting point, which a lot of people blame, which is ping. NA plays on 60 to 70 ping, varying on your ISP, when you play from California. So main things that I want to talk about in this situation is as follows. Pro players are required by Riot to play at LCS every weekend. That's the requirement. They do not require you to have a house in LA, but, logistically, you're not going to have pro players going back and forth and living out of hotels and stuff like that. So, by proxy, although not actually required, you're required to have a house in LA. So that is where all of the pro players must play the games. So, this excuse as a standalone isn't great, obviously. You can still get a lot of value from ping. I think a lot of people have pointed out that Vietnam pros play on Korea, and LMS players play on Korea, and they get 50 to 60 ping also. So it's totally fine. You can find reference points of other players doing well, even with the ping disparity. As an individual argument, obviously it's not a great argument in general. Things that I do want to talk about, though, that you shouldn't ignore, even if it's not a good excuse, is as follows. So, as I stated before, you are required to be in California while the servers are in Chicago. So, one of my solutions that I saw a lot of people pointing out, and I actually kind of agreed with this, which was make Masters Plus on California server. I thought this was a reasonable solution. And I'll get to the counterpoints afterwards. So, this is a way for us to not push out all of the casual players. I know most people, you're never Masters, right? There's like less than 1,000 people between like Masters and Challenger. So this wouldn't ostracize most of the population. I understand why they put this Chicago server, so that people across the huge landmass that is the States and even Canada can participate in League of Legends. We don't have enough player base to split the server in half. Totally reasonable. But as a pro player being forced to play in California, I think it is a bit silly that you scrim on 8 ping, then you go to 60 ping, and there's too much variance. Now, if you had participated and you played in LCS on 60 ping, then you could make the argument, well, okay, it's the same shit, right? Like, it's lame to play on 60 ping, but it's okay because you have the consistency. But variability causes it so that it diminishes the mechanical practice that you can get on servers, and I really like this solution. So, argument that I've heard, you won't have East Coast pro players. You're ostracizing some of the market. I'm gonna have to say that when the servers are in Chicago, you basically fuck over the West Coast players anyway. You're always gonna have someone that has a problem with this system. The US is just too big. It's too big, and the ISP infrastructure is too terrible that there's not going to ever be a solution that everyone is going to be satisfied with. But if you're going to have pro players move all the way to California to participate in the LCS, I feel like this is the most reasonable and fair thing to do. If you play on the East Coast, I don't know what else to say besides that's kind of tough luck, in my opinion, because you're not you're not in California to be a professional player. So I feel like that the needs of the elite like should circumvent the the outliers basically of the system. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it. That's my situation. But yeah, I don't think ping is like too big of a standalone issue. Obviously, it discourages you from wanting to play. I can say with experience going between each of the ping, it's basically a completely different game just from a mechanical standpoint. You go from literally predicting pretty much everything that goes on to actually being able to play well to relatively reactive, which then allows you to actually hone in on skills of working on your mechanics as an individual player. Alright, so that's just thoughts on ping. So I kind of put this together as a core thing, and this is, I'll just tie it into actually something that happened in Pobelter's video, well, Pobelter's interview, sorry, which is queue times, population, and role selection, kind of like a condensed thing. So everyone uses the reference point for Korea. It's a great reference point to have. Their internet infrastructure is the best. They have like 7 or 8 ping consistently as Korean pro players, and they don't have all of the struggles that NA does. NA actually has one of the lowest populations, especially for the amount of landmass that it has, of anything. There's 2 to 3 times in EU West, not including EU and E, and like Korea has like 3 to 5 times as much, and then China's just ridiculous, obviously. So when it comes to everything, there's an extremely extreme disparity between population. What does that mean? Well, it means, for one, that you have less players playing the game, which means that you have a less percentage chance of producing elite level talent. That's just the statistics thing. For every one double lift that comes out in North America, you can have 5 in China, for an example. Just a logistics thing. It's just a numbers thing. Like, you're gonna have more people that are just better. And because you have more people that are better, it usually causes either people who are in the scene to elevate their skill level, learn from them, elevate their skill level, or they just get replaced. This is a motivational tool that's really good. A lot of people like to reference the Cloud9 situation where some of the players may have not been motivated, and that's why they were swapping players in and out. And you saw the huge amount of uproar that happened because of it. That's because most players can't be replaced because there's not the skill level to replace them on academy teams and stuff like that. You don't see this situation happen pretty much at all in Korea. Most Korean teams operate with like 10 to 12-ish of their roster. You see them swapping in and out like subs, and you hear that subs play games like quite on a high frequency, etc., etc. So just tying this into experience, Pobelter explained that when he experienced on playing in EU West and bootcamping in Korea, is that 90% of the time he got his role, and his queue times were significantly shorter. So it's an efficiency thing, right? Shorter queue times, and you're getting your role means that pros get more efficient value out of practice. Number 1, the queue times are faster, they get more games in, right? Number 2, since their queue times are faster, they more often than not get their role. This matters a lot, because that also means that it's on the opposite side. When they're playing against other people, more often than not, they're playing against people who also main the role. That means that you get more efficiency out of each of the games that you play. You're playing against someone who mains their role, and you're getting more games in. Because of this, you just have a huge advantage in terms of how much time you can get. You only have so much time in the day. You're not a robot. You can't play 24 hours a day. This causes efficiency of practice when it comes to solo queue. Contributes to mechanical practice, and it's just one of the reasons why we don't really have as great of players. Another thing to note too is feeder systems. So he stated in the video that on Korea you play with LMS pros, you play with Chinese pros, you play with Vietnam pros, you play with Japanese pros. Now and then on EU West you play with all the regional league players, And he did mention that although they may not be the best, they have competitive experience. These are all like relatively competitive players. They know some of at least the functionality of working as a team. They're not like one-trick ponies. It means that you just have way more at the top when it comes to players that can just play at a certain time, right? Like you can't have everyone always playing all the time. So just making sure that you have enough population to fill up your games matters a lot, because that also means that, you know, you get your role, you play against people who have their role. These players have competitive experience. You just get way more value when it comes to your time invested. If I queue up a game right now on my Masters or Challenger account, and I queue, and I get support, right? Because it's like not a contested role. But then I play with an off-roll AD carry, and I'm against two people that are Diamond 1. Not only is there a huge skill disparity, but then I have potentially all these other variables that make the game less valuable to me, in the sense that I'm not playing against good players. Maybe they aren't experienced in the role, and that can happen like relatively frequently. Plus, I sit in longer queues because there's just less people. It's just a logistics thing. And for this one, I don't actually have a solution. It just sucks, you know. In North America, if you don't really know, especially in the States, most people are console players, actually. Console games are a big thing in the States. That's why Fortnite does so well with their cross-console in the States. And just in general, most people usually choose getting a console over a computer in the States. It's not the same in Korea and EU, and so because of that, that's just how it is. So there's not really a solution to this. Unfortunately, just on landmass, we don't even get access to people in like Latin America South and Latin America North. Their ping is actually just so bad that for the most part, there's no point in them playing. They're just too far away, so we're just screwed in this case. There's not really too much that you can do. Just a topic that I want to talk about, because it's actually a pretty important thing when it comes to efficiency of everything. Remember, when everyone asks, how do I get better at League? Or if I'm starting League, what do? Most people will tell you to play 1 or 2 champions, because it's logistically a better use of your time. Because your time matters, and how much time you put in and how much time you get of value matters in terms of growing in it and getting better. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get any value from solo queue in that sense because of the situation. I'm just saying that it diminishes the value that you can generate from it. So, next is voice comms. I think it's absolutely atrocious that there is no voice comms when it comes to League of Legends. Arguments I've heard for against it. Oh, like, if someone's in voice comms, then they can, like, flame me for my voice. They can berate me on voice comms. It's just an unenjoyable experience. Simple counterpoint. Why can I ping in League of Legends if I can question mark ping when you fuck up? I've now given you an unintended element of something, and then been like, well, I guess you should just sack the whole ping system, because I can abuse you and harass you when it comes to pings. So, obviously the source is you should just mute them in most cases. Right? So, easy solutions for this, opt-in voice chats. A lot of people, maybe they don't want to use voice chat, they're uncomfortable with it, they don't want to get berated, they don't want to get flamed. Perfect. Alright, let's give them the opt-in option. That way, you can at least consciously choose whether or not you want to be participating in that. That's my thing on that. I think it's ridiculous that at any time I want to do something in lane with my teammate, or I want to make a play or something like that, I have to literally freeze all motor function from playing the game to then type an essay on what I want to have happen in the game. I think that's ridiculous. That completely pulls away from the level of performance that happens in solo queue in general. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe this isn't a thing. Also, another thing, I come from a bunch of games that have voice comms. Number one, most people, when they hear a voice, they actually associate it with a human person, and they're actually less likely to be egregious and rude in chat. Now, you'll always find people that are just rude and douchebaggery regardless of the system. There's a mute button for that, and there's a report system for that. But I feel like the thought of abuse should not outweigh the value that you can get from having voice comms. HOTS has it. When I played Heroes of Newerth, like back in 2012 or some shit, I had voice comms. There's no way you can't have the tech for it. We already see it. We already see it in when you deal with someone or anything like that. It's just ridiculous. Voice comms should be in. If you're really scared about people getting harassed and abused, turn it into an opt-in thing where it's automatically off. That way people can consciously choose it. Because I guarantee you that the majority of higher elo players want to have voice comms in the game. That way they don't have to take away from their gameplay, and so that they can actually get information out to players without taking away from them controlling their actual character. Ridiculous that it's not in the game. Don't really want to go in too hard on that. So, we'll tie into tryharding culture. Wow, I stroke there. So, as I pointed out, there's a lot of problems with solo queue. We'll tie this into streaming too, since that's like an important thing. So, when you're a pro player, so I want to show you this from a pro player's perspective. When you're a pro player, you play scrims, right? You're playing scrims for 8 to 10 hours a day. You choose your teammates. You're in voice comms. You prepare strategies. Right? You know that your players are good on your team. Not randomly assigned. When you queue up in solo queue, you have no voice comms. Right? This is something people have to work on a lot too. Like most pro players, their comms levels are very bad. You have no comms. You can have autofilled players with huge player discrepancies. You don't choose these players. When you load into a game, the games don't matter to you. The only thing you're there for is practice. The win or the loss doesn't matter. The practice is what matters. So let's say that I'm a pro player and I'm like, all right, I think Wukong mid is good now. I think Wukong in mid is good now. So I go into a game, I start playing Wukong mid. Now normally in my situation, I've now chunked the mid laner out. I would invade with my jungler. I ping for my jungler to come. My jungler just does red buff and then channels back. That's tilting, right? Like that's a frustrating element because you're not actually practicing the scenarios that you would normally do in a competitive match. And that's the whole point of being a competitive player is that you use solo queue as an extension to practice the elements of the game on a new champion potentially, so that you can then learn all the elements of it. Because you don't do that, then like your jungler dies or like your bot lane dies because of that. The score is like 0-5. And especially right now, I don't want to touch too much on the meta, but like especially right now with the volatility of the meta, your games can be over really, really fast. I think most people agree with this. You can come back in games, but in general, Riot's made it mostly about team deathmatch, and usually if you're behind by a significant margin, it makes you disinterested in the game and the value of it. Because of that, it's a lot harder for a pro player to give a fuck about a game. I know that's really a bad way of saying it. Obviously, you should be trying to win pretty much the entire game, but remember, these players play with certain elements of the game that are literally not available to them on live server. And because of that, it's a lot harder to either try or potentially seem like they're trying harder. There are lots of pro players that are elite level players that are Diamond 1 or low masters. Why is that? Well, for one, the ladder system rewards you basically playing every day, all day. Right? That's how the system has it. The system is trying to make you have 50% win rate. That's how the algorithm works. That's how they've stated the algorithm works. And because of that, if pro players don't have enough time to put a bunch of games in, it's totally fine that they're not super high elo. I don't think that actually matters. Plus, like I said before, a lot of pro players, their comms suck, but the elite level players, their comms are good. They know how to play as a team. And you take away those elements in a solo queue game, then they're going to look like they actually aren't trying when maybe they are actually trying. They're just missing some of the pieces of the game that they're used to playing with, especially also switching between 8 and 60 ping, but not really as negligible, in my opinion, as something like voice comms, and also skill disparity between players. I've played enough games to know that when I load into a game and I know that that's an LCS jungler, and I know that I have Joe Schmo who plays like support and AD carry playing jungle trundle for the third time, I'm probably going to lose that game pretty quickly, and it's going to look like I'm inting even if I'm not. So there's a lot of misconceptions with it. There are times where pro players don't try hard. That's totally a reasonable thing. They should try hard. Practice is what you make it as a good way to live about that. But there's a lot of elements that tie into potentially maybe not looking like you're tryharding. I guess I'll also tie this into streaming, since this is an important thing. I'm personally a streamer. Streaming is actually a lot more important than people make it out to be. Yeah. So, you play a pro for 3 to 5 years, usually. Maybe you can play a little bit longer now. Let's say upwards of like 6 to 8 years, but we haven't even gotten to pros that are that level. But let's just say 5. Let's say 5 to 7 years is like your expected average length. When you're done being a pro player, mostly what you have is your connections and your fan base. If you don't invest in those things, then you exit and then you have to go back to school, which means that you basically spent the better half of your 20s not getting a college education, which seems to be really important right now, just for getting your foot in the door with jobs. Yeah, so you want to be investing in your fan base. You do. I know that's something like a lot of people don't like hearing, that, you should just only care about winning. But like when it's all said and done, the smart thing is actually to invest in your brand, like a lot. Because when it's all said and done, you want to be able to make transitions. You don't want to be like, well, fuck, I don't even know what to do anymore. I can't do anything. So you want to have a good following. Online influencers are becoming more and more of a thing as like each of the days go on. It's important to do it. So streaming. I know a lot of people are like, well, streamers ruin the game. Probably. I know when I stream, my focus is like barely 50-50, if I'm lucky, on my chat versus my game. It's totally reasonable to complain about that. But unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of the situation. Especially because of the fact that your game qualities are usually a lot lower because of all these situations. You're going to tell me that a pro player can't stream anymore and should give you more than 12 hours in scrim blocks to just keep playing? I think that's ridiculous. I think that if we are going to start moving towards in-houses, which we'll start talking about now, you should be allowed to stream them. I think that's ridiculous. So, just make a streamer mode. Yeah, that's probably a good thing to have. I do agree with some of the points that like LS and a couple of other people talked about. There probably should be streamer mode so that when you go through band pick phase, you don't know the names of your teammates. That way, people can't snipe you. I also saw Sneaky and a couple other people. They have a new overlay on their minimap, which covers just the jungle parts. It doesn't cover the lanes, but it covers the jungle parts, so you don't see the jungler. I thought that was actually a pretty good solution to some anti-ghosting things, and I do think that streamers, including myself, should probably include some of those things. I think stream delay is not the answer. It ruins a lot of the element of interaction with your stream. I tried it out where I had 1 to 2 minutes. It was awful. So that is not the solution, but the solution that I just talked about. Those are good solutions to streamer situations to at least elevate the competitive level a decent amount. So we'll start talking about in-houses and kind of tying everything back. So I'm a little bit all over the place when it comes to this. So Pobelter tried 4 years ago and failed with 50 people. He explained things like there were only 10 to 15 people that signed up most of the time. He sometimes didn't get his role when he played the in-houses, so it was a waste of his time. A lot of situations like this, okay? I'll share my experiences with doing in-houses, because I actually streamed in-houses before. So, back, I think about a year or two ago, in the off-season, we did Coob's in-houses. Now, what we did was we just had a Google document sheet, and you just signed up for it. And that's how we basically did our games. We just waited for everyone to sign up, made sure that everyone had at least, everyone only signed up for the role they had. So we circumvented one of the problems Pobelter complained about, which was in-houses with off-roll, because no off-roll allowed. Problem that ended up happening, in-houses are organized custom games where you decide who plays in them. So, one of the things that ended up happening in this, though, was we had 1 to 2, I use the word elite players in our in-houses, because this was just challenger stuff, right? We had 1 to 2 elite players in each of the roles, and then we had an assortment of lower skill level players. So, when we played in-houses, we had Licorice. So when Licorice would sign up on a team, everyone wanted to be on Licorice's team because Licorice was going to crap on whoever signed up on the other side of the team. Because of this, it became difficult to actually entice people to play on certain teams. We tried getting people to go on balanced teams, but it pretty much meant that you were always entering those games knowing that there was going to be a role disparity problem. Because of this, it made people very disinterested and didn't want to play anymore because of the sign-up system. Solutions to that, I read actually in the comment section, the way Han in-houses worked is you just put your name into an IRC bot, and then it would just print out all of the players. Although it wouldn't work specifically like that because you would actually have to attach roles to it, since Han didn't actually require roles, you just played champions. I think this is not a bad idea, but I think it's what Riot would not allow you to do because Riot does not want third parties interacting with their matchmaking. In fact, I remember reading somewhere in the rule books that you are basically prohibited from doing anything third-party oriented when it comes to the matchmaking. They want you to use their matchmaking and only their matchmaking, so they probably wouldn't allow this. Unfortunately, this would be maybe a solution to it. They also talked about the Faceit pros. If any of you watch like CSGO, they do like pro in-houses and stuff like that in a whole league that's based off of a community of invited pros plus like other people that get let in, and then they can vote to like remove people who are maybe not playing enough, not tryharding, being toxic in games, etc., etc. And the Faceit Pro League said that they would be interested in potentially doing this. I can say right now that probably this won't ever happen since Riot just doesn't ever want to interact with third-party members. But a good solution to it would be to have a TR. Apparently, the TR that currently is played, they use actually as a PBE test realm for new things. So that's one of the reasons why they use for not streaming it. If they want to do that, I'd prefer them just to do that on the PBE or something, and then just use the TR with the Faceit Pro League to set this up. But I'm not really convinced that anything like that will happen. And that's also my experience when it comes to this. So, I do want to tackle something that this word that keeps getting used, and it's a pretty egregious word. And the word is lazy. So, pro players wake up, they eat, they watch VODs, they prep for their scrims, and they play 3 blocks a day. 3 blocks usually amount to about 10 to 12 hours of play. This is already on top of the fact that they also perform on LCS stage and basically only have 1 day off. Okay? If a normal human being worked 10 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, technically 6 days a week, they would implode within a couple of years. It's somehow acceptable for the public to call pro players lazy. They might be lazy in some elements in the sense of setting things up, but you can easily have a manager do that at this point in time. It's really taboo to say this. I know a lot of people don't. I know a lot of pro players won't ever say this, but it's like, once you play 12 hours a day, man, of your scrim blocks, you probably don't actually want to play anymore. You probably want to take a break, chill, relax, process your information. It's too much. It's absolutely too much for a person to be doing already 10 to 12 hours a day. People work that much all the time. Ever heard of working 2 jobs? And that's extremely unhealthy. So you want to promote unhealthy lifestyle for everyone. Alright, so a lot of people compare Korea to this shit. This is ridiculous. Korea has one of the highest suicide rates and had to literally pass laws stopping their people from working. You do not want to have people working like Koreans. I don't want the Korean way. I don't want it. A lot of people who watch the games are attached to the players. Well, guess what? Those players won't be around in 3 years if you make them play the way Koreans do it. They're fucking crazy. They're actually crazy. To work that much is mental insanity. To work as much as I do, you already have to there's something missing in your brain that stops you and makes you not work. It's so bad. It's so not good for you. It's so fucking bad. for you as a person. If you want players to burn out and turn out in every 2 to 3 years, that's exactly the direction you're going when you advocate that people work harder. It's not bad, or it's not good, it's madness. I don't like it. It's not healthy. It's just not. It's not healthy. Even if you want your pro player, I understand where it comes from. It comes from a good spot where you want your pro players to succeed. You want people to do well. It's not healthy. You shouldn't advocate it. And the fact that people use this word so lightly, lazy as in like, oh yeah, after you play 3 blocks a day, you should also want a solo queue. It's like, no, that's madness. You don't want people to do that because you want to promote healthy lifestyles. Just because, basically, like pro sports people, the reason why they don't work as hard is, or they only work 8 to 10 hours a day because of the physical limitations, right? Well, no one talks about the mental limitations that it has, the level of toll that it has on you between the stress of performance and also always playing at peak level. When it comes to scrim blocks, you can't expect it. Most pro players, if you talk to them after they finish their 3 blocks, they're spent. You would be spent too. It's way too stressful. It's so not worth it. Sorry, I don't like this word. It's such an oppressive word. And a lot of pro players won't ever say that. It's just like, man, I just don't want to. Sorry, like, I want to have a life too. You know what I mean? Like, I need rest. It's actually sometimes better to just not work as hard. In fact, actually, when I describe my peak level of performance, I almost never touched solo queue and I only played about 2 blocks a day. Because sometimes it's more important to have compressed, very good practice than it is to just zombie mode for 16 hours a day. It's not worth it. It's 100% not worth it. In fact, in multiple interviews where Doublelift talked about when he went over to Korea with CLG back in the day, and they just played scrims over and over again, he just felt like he was going through the motions. It actually wasn't even valuable to him to practice that much. It wasn't valuable to him. So the fact that he was just wasting his time and it wasn't valuable to him, it's ridiculous. So I'm tired of seeing this lazy shit. It's garbage. It's filth. It's like the over-abuse of the word toxic, basically, for anyone who just disagrees with you at this point in time. I don't like it at all, and it's very bad. You can say lazy in the sense of setting it up, but quite honestly, what pros won't tell you is, man, they just don't want to fucking do it afterwards. They play 3 blocks a day. That's their time and energy into it. They need a break. They need to chill, and it's not valuable in most cases. So you probably won't ever get your in-houses, especially while we're triple blocking every team. I can already tell you from experience watching and playing triple blocks that even the 3rd block isn't that valuable most of the time because they're already spent mentally on the games that they're playing. So I don't want to talk about this anymore. Lazy, stop using it. This is bullshit. Get that shit out of my face. Garbage. So then, and then we'll talk about, one thing that, Pobelter said is that showing people other tendencies. He said, like, oh, I don't want to play in-houses because what if I played TSM and I showed Bjergsen how I play, like, Twisted Fate or something like that. I understand where this is coming from, but I think this is, like, a pretty shallow reason. I think there are a lot of good reasons why in-houses don't work right now or whatever, but this one isn't one of them. I think this is crap. I don't think this is icing on a cake. Most of the time, if you show tendencies, then you already have a problem with your play. Plus, actually, one of the things a lot of people say as a pro is most of the time when you're winning almost all your scrims in a week, that's usually the weeks that you lose your LCS games because most people don't show you the problems with your play. So if you have tendencies and stuff like that, then you should want to play against the people that will punish you for it so that you can work and actively fix those tendencies to not have them as frequently. That makes you a better player. So that one actually does not hold any water to me. I don't like it. Okay, so I'll open it up to like chat if they have any like statements about my statements or any questions about that, and then we'll just wrap it up and then we'll jump into games. So is there anything that you guys want to say or ask about or anything like that? Because if not, we'll just jump right into playing. Will NA ever beat Korea? No. No. Never. Especially because of the fact that most people who get imported, which were elite talent, have shown actually to be weaker talent in NA. So you can't solve the problem ever. Alright, cool. If you missed this, it'll go up on YouTube probably tonight, so don't worry about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below, and hit that bell and whistle so you can get notifications whenever I go live. That's YouTube. Peace out.